Now we'll talk about how the production of urine is regulated and how the urine is transported. And first about the control of osmoregulation. Humans can control the volume of urine and osmolarity. Osmolarity is concentration of dissolved compounds, and not just in urine, also in blood. In response to changes to the salt intake and water intake. So the more you drink, the more you pee. And it's regulated by a combination of signals from the nervous and endocrine system. And as I said, it's not just about the concentration of urine, the content of water in urine. It's also about water balance in the body in general, including blood pressure and blood volume. And the first hormone that I want to mention is the ADH. We just talked about it in the previous lecture. It is one of the hormones that produced by the posterior pituitary. And you can already say what it does just by the name: antidiuretic, anti-peeing hormone. So if the concentrations of solutes in the blood increases, which means like losing the liquid portion of the blood, like if you sweat profoundly, for example, or you eat the salty food, these changes in the salt concentration in the body is sensed by specific receptors that reside in the hypothalamus in the brain. And this part of the brain gives signal to release the ADH. ADH is released and it acts in two ways. First of all, it changes the permeability of collecting ducts. So now the water can leave the filtrate, can leave the collecting ducts, and will be picked up by the blood. And this will increase the water content of the blood and reduce the salt concentration in the blood, or the concentration of salts in the blood. At the same time, it induces thirst. So you lose less water in urine, plus you add water because you drink it. And that returns the concentration of solutes, the osmolarity, to the norm. Also, before I told you about the disease diabetes insipidus, when the ADH is not produced, it not restricts the production of urine, and these people urinate a lot, and that also means they have to drink a lot. Also, some substances block the release of ADH, and the two of them you definitely know is alcohol and caffeine. So if you drink a lot of coffee, then you run to the bathroom all the time because they work as diuretics. The same as alcohol. I hope you don't drink to this point, but very drunk people feel very thirsty because they lose a lot of water because they don't produce the ADH. So if you happen to drink, you also have to drink alcohol, you also have to drink a lot of water not to get dehydrated. The second very complicated system that regulates the content of the body fluids is the so-called RAAS system, or renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So I'll show you the picture. When the blood pressure or the blood volume drop, for example, if you dehydrate or simply you lose the blood, you bleed out. This is sensed by special cells that's a part of the nephrons. It's called JGA complex, juxtaglomerular apparatus here. And these cells release the enzyme named renin. And through multiple reactions, this causes the formation of another hormone, the peptide called angiotensin. Angiotensin, on one hand, it constricts the blood vessels, and that increases the blood pressure. And it also affects the adrenal gland. Particularly, it stimulates the release of aldosterone, one of these corticoid hormones that's produced in the cortex of the adrenals. Aldosterone makes the body to reclaim water. So more water is going to the blood, and that increases the blood pressure and the blood volume to the norm. So ADH And this system increase the blood volume, increase the blood pressure, and reduce the formation of urine. But there is everything in the body has to be balanced. There is another hormone. It is produced in a very unusual place. It is produced by the heart, by the atrium of the heart. And because of this, it's called atrial natriuretic peptide, ANP. So it acts in the opposite and antagonistic way. It lowers blood pressure. It is released when the blood volume increases, the pressure increases, and this stretches the walls of the atrium. So that's the signal to produce the ANP. And ANP secreted, when it's secreted, it inhibits the release of renin and promotes the excretion of water and sodium by the kidneys. It causes the relaxation of blood vessels, and this reduces the blood pressure and the blood volume. So two systems, ADH and renin, they increase the blood volume and pressure, and ANP decreases the blood volume and blood pressure. Just wanted to mention that a lot of the drugs that fight the hypertension, the high blood pressure, they inhibit renin. They cancel its action. So once the urine is produced, it has to be transported out of the body, which happens through the urinary tract, ureters, bladder, and urethra. So ureters are tubes. They're muscular tubes. They begin at the renal pelvis and then they enter the bladder. The urine is not just dripping down by itself. It's pushed also by peristaltic contractions, by this wave-like movement of the muscles that squeeze the urine along the ureter like every 30 seconds. And then it is collected in the bladder. The bladder is like a sac, muscular sac. It serves for the temporary storage of the urine. Its walls are made of muscles. So first of all, they can stretch to collect urine, and then they contract and release the urine. The urine is locked in the bladder by two sphincters. Sphincters are circles of muscles. The upper one, which you cannot control, but then there's the internal urethral sphincter. But then here, there is external urethral sphincter that actually voluntary. So this one, when they tell you to hold it, that's what these muscles work for you to keep the urine inside the bladder. And then when the bladder contracts and squeezes the urine out, it travels through the urethra from the neck of the bladder and outside. And its urethra is different in males and females simply because of the organization of their urinary and especially reproductive systems. So female urethra is short, it's about 3 to 5 centimeters, so it's like 1 to 2 inches, and it opens in front of the opening of the vagina. So we have urinary system opening outside, and we have the reproductive system opening outside. They do not combine. Like two orifices, different. And also women are a little bit more prone to infections, urinary tract infections, simply because they have shorter urethra. Male urethra is almost 3 times longer because it comes out of the urinary bladder and then it is located inside the penis and it opens at the top of the penis. The other difference with the male and female urinary system, that at some point the reproductive system and the urinary, so the urethra, combine in one structure. So in males, urethra serves for the release of urine, but also for the release of semen. So both urine and semen travel through the urethra and then release through the penis. The disease often associated with urinary system and urinary tract in particular is kidney stones, the calculi they're sometimes called. These are real stones, they're made of minerals. They formed inside the kidneys, but they actually can reside in any part of the urinary tract. They can be in the kidneys, they can be in the ureters, in the bladder. They're caused by very often by the diet, by the excessive body weight, in certain medical conditions as well, or as a result of taking some medications and supplements. Kidney stones are very, people can live with kidney stones and never feel the effect of it. But if these kidney stones are dislodged and they start to travel through the urinary tract, it's extremely painful. And it's usually one side of the abdomen, because that's which kidney or which urinary tract, left or right side, is affected. They don't usually cause permanent damage, but they can kind of scratch the insides of the urinary tract. They can be treated. Simple treatment is drinking a lot of water. That will help to wash out, flush out the kidney stones. But if they're really large and if they got stuck there, they have to be either removed surgically or broken. And that's another interesting story behind how the method, how sanication was invented to break the stones, because it was found in a laboratory that was actually military laboratory that studied, a company that studied the effect of shock waves on humans. So they were shooting high velocity projectiles and seeing and looking for what would it does, these shock waves, what would they do to the human body. And surprisingly, they found that these shock waves break the kidney stones without affecting the tissues around, because there were attempts to break the kidney stones, but before for a long period of time, but they were unsuccessful. And then there was this serendipity discovery that you can use the shock waves or ultrasound to break the kidney stones. And since then, this technology was developed and now it's actively used in medicine. And I think that's the end. So next time, the new topic, reproductive system.